The time has come to take a ride this spooky season on the platform. What a scary title. Let me do it one more time for you. The platform. The platform. All right, so I guess like anything can be a horror movie title if you just will it to be. What's up? I'm John Stark from MovieGuy.com, and as you may have guessed, I watched The Platform on Netflix. It has audio description. It's actually a Spanish movie, I believe, and so it has dubbing and audio description. This is originally from 2019. They just dropped The Platform 2. I didn't even know The Platform was a thing. And I was trying to think to myself, I was like, is this the film with the two girls, like Allison Williams, I think, was in it? Like, did they make a sequel to that? That's what I thought this was. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, no, it's not that. Oh, thank God. That movie would have had a weird sequel. I can't remember what that movie was called, but this is basically Snowpiercer. Yeah, it's Snowpiercer, but with, I guess, tiny spoiler alert, but also / trigger warning for anybody interested with cannibalism. It's a horror movie review, so if you're kind of wondering, like, well, how does this translate into horror? Why is this in the spooky season? Is it scary? They sort of. I mean, they eat people. There's some violence. There's some gore, and some people get attacked, and there's violence and stuff. But I think probably the cannibal angle is what qualifies it here. I think a good indication is the fact that Netflix felt the need to release the sequel during spooky season, so during October. And that was what grabbed me, and I was like, well, this has to be some sort of a horror movie franchise. I thought the plot line that Netflix gave me was woefully inadequate. And based on, especially after having watched the movie, I was like, well, sort of. It's like telling people Jurassic Park is about people who go to a theme park. I guess that's kind of what that's about. Do you not want to tell people what the theme park? And anyway, so this is set in some weird dystopian reality. Reminded me a little bit of last year's The Mill in Hulu, where Lil Rel Howery wakes up in a room by himself and is like, what the hell's going on? There's a dude who wakes up in a room and he's got like a bunkmate, and he's like, what the hell's going on? And I was like, well, this is one of those movies where somebody wakes up and they have no idea where they are. And we learn that there is a system that's set up, and up at the top on floor 0, on 0 day, we have the floor where they make the food, and you see all these chefs and they're preparing these big fancy meals, and then they put it on the table and they send it down, and it goes down, 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 down. And as the further it goes, it's the same table of food. So it's a feast, right? And it basically this is like an advertisement for communism and how everybody should have the same thing and rationing. And if we all just some of us live in excess, and if we learn to live at less in excess and social structures and class, and this is what happens when we start watching international features from other countries that have political ideas, and they find ways of working those political ideas into interesting films like this, like Again, like Snowpiercer had the same sort of idea where the people at the back of the train, clearly you see the people at the front of the train have plenty of stuff to do, but the people at the back of the train are eating like insects. So, uh, it's, yeah, this is sort of like the same thing where the people on the top floors, they get their first crack at this table, but they only have a certain amount of time to eat from the table and then it lowers. But the problem is it has to lower sort of an indeterminate amount of floors. I don't want to ruin it because at some point there are people who think that they know how many floors there are, and it's always like it's always like a guessing game. It's like an educated guess. So I don't want to say people are wrong because it's also inherently a spoiler, but I guess you can pick up whatever you think I'm saying. Um, so this guy, he's here with an older guy that's been there for a while, and they find out that our new young guy, he actually signed up to be here because, and I didn't quite get his story because he has like two reasons for being here. One, he wanted to quit smoking, and two, they would offer him a degree when he was done. So he was gonna get like like a I I guess like a college education degree, like a congratulations, you went to college without actually going to college, like a quick way to go to college, spend 6 months and doing this thing, and if you make it out, you get your bachelor's. Um, but at the same time, he also needed the 6 months to so he could quit smoking. I don't know. I feel like pick one of the two things. Like, does he need the degree? He doesn't even like really justify why he needs the degree. And the smoking thing also seems like an afterthought where he just kind of does it like in one flashback where he's like, he's just like smoking a lot in one flashback. I was like, this is awful character development and very shitty reasons for him to be here, all things considered. So he starts off with this roommate and he ends up sort of like bouncing around floors, and you go down and you go up, and he has to sort of survive and see if he can make it to the end. And he has interesting interactions with each one of his roommates and different experiences. There are rules to the whole system. Like, you can't keep any food. It all has to, you only get the time that you get with the table, and if everything has to stay on the table to go down to the next level that remains, you can't keep anything. Otherwise the room will start attacking you. Basically, they will either turn up the heat or turn down and start freezing you to death. One of two things will happen. So there's a woman who rides up and down. She's fun. On the cart. She's a fun non-verbal character, which is another reason why the audio description works really well. It's because I don't think she ever actually spoke. But it's an interesting concept. It's Snowpiercer, and yeah, at some point, because obviously people at the top don't ration the food. It's a lesson. So the people at the bottom that have nothing to eat. So what do? Well, they eat their cellmates. You know what I'm saying? Like, people when they get down too far, they just start killing themselves and all that kind of stuff. So things are not good in the bottom half because everybody's selfish. And they eat food. A lot of times, mainly it's because if you did survive the bottom, you end up kind of moving back up and you're like so grateful to find food again. You're like, well, I made it a month without food. Oh my God, food. So it's really sort of like a perpetual cycle where if you just keep moving the people down and then up and then down and then up, yeah, they'll do anything to survive, but at the same time, then they get really grateful. So, eventually they come up with like sort of a plan and enact it. And I'm sort of interested in what the platform 2 will be, and why there's a sequel to this. Because it would be sort of like if you told me Snowpiercer 2 was coming, I'd be like, fuck you. Like, why? What would that film even be? Like, the train doesn't even work at the end of the film. You know what I'm saying? Like, how would you? What what was Snowpiercer? It's like the joke of Titanic too. Is like, but why? Like, but why? So, it's unsettling and unnerving and has some ideas, but I definitely picked up on like the uh what's funny is at some point the guy, they do something and some guy and one of the characters yells back at me, is like, are you a communist? And I'm like, this whole film is about communism. This whole film is about an equal share. This whole film is about like everybody rationing and getting the same thing and eliminating, the benefit of being at a certain level, so there is no level anymore. There is no, it doesn't, because right now, if you're level 1, that you get first crack at the table, so you can eat whatever the hell you want, as much of it as you want. And then if you're at the bottom, so I mean, it's a clear system. And so I love that the film isn't even self-aware enough to know what it is and like what it's suggesting. And I absolutely picked up on what they were putting down. I was like, I get it. I get what you're saying. It's a, well, if we all just pitched in, if we all just got along, if we all just did our same share, if we could all have the same things, we don't need to live in excess. If nobody lived in excess, we would all live equally. Basically, is what it is. It's a sort of anti-capitalism, like anti whatever. So if this feels like your vibe for a spooky season, do it. I already warned you about the cannibalism, so if it's something that you don't want, I'm not going to hide that from you. Is it a spoiler? Sort of. Somebody will be eaten in the film, at least one person, sure. But at the same time, I know people who would turn away from a film because of that. Everybody has their own different like plans for horror movies, and well, that would be one. They're not directly serving them humans, though, from the beginning, just to clarify. It's just more of a, like, when you get down to the bottom and there's nothing on the table, how do you eat? That kind of thing. So, it is real food. Like, they go to the trouble of showing you these chefs that are making these, like, lavish meals for some reason and sending them down. They're not just, like, sending down, like, groceries. So, cans of soda, bags of chips. Here you go. They're sending down like lobster, escargot, stuff like that. Like really fancy meals every time. And just none of it makes it all the way down. I thought it was okay. I liked what it was doing. I picked up on what it was putting down. I like Snowpiercer better. Snowpiercer doesn't necessarily immediately resort to cannibalism as a means to an end, and it basically says the same thing with some strong acting performances. I really like the dubbing here, actually. I will give props to the cast. I actually thought they did a really nice job. These were actors who showed up for the voice performances, so that was really interesting to see, to have an entire cast full of people that I felt like were who they were. They weren't it's a very Spanish cast, but nobody really sounded Spanish, which is like kind of, I guess we get into that and say, well, is this really an authentic cast, which is something I brought up in my reviews of like Women in Blue and stuff like that. But other than that, I thought these actors showed up. So at least they showed up. Like, at least if we're going to cast sort of like a wide variety of voice talent in the dubbing roles, then might as well make sure that they're giving like 110%. I thought they did. Audio description, the written audio description was really good. Narrator wise, she's a little too perky for the film. It's it's the wrong kind of unnerving, considering the context of many of the things that she has to describe, and she seems way too happy to describe it. And uh, it's not the right tone for the film. This is where we get down to casting. It's just like, I would have cast somebody who knew what they were talking about, and I think it's a human anyway. It's just not a voice I was immediately familiar with, and because I watched The Platform knowing that The Platform 2 was, man, Netflix tried to get me into The Platform 2, like, right away. I mean, like, like they were trying to double feature me. I got, like, I don't think I've ever been kicked out of a film as quickly as on Netflix as I was with this one. They were like, don't you want to watch the sequel? I was like, no, give me a, what did I get, like, directed by? Like, I didn't even get, yeah, I got, like, maybe, like, 2 credits, and, like, I was immediately, like, they were like, "The Platform 2," and I was like, no, man, I'm not trying to marathon this franchise. But I'm gonna watch the sequel and then release these 2 videos on the same day. So, soon, Padawan. But yes, there's some interesting and gory details to describe in the description, and I thought they did a really decent job of the ick, good ick factor. Just next time, maybe don't give it to Britney Spears. Maybe next time, just don't give it to somebody who doesn't really seem to understand what it is they're talking about. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. So I kind of like this. I'm intrigued at the existence of a sequel, but it could also be a hot mess. Not every film needs a sequel. It could expand the franchise in a new and interesting way, or it could completely collapse it. So I'm gonna give The Platform a B+. Perhaps if I hadn't seen Snowpiercer, if I hadn't seen a better movie that does relatively the same thing, and also if I wasn't trying to conceptually understand the amount of stories and be like, okay, so this is like vertical, and like you're going this far, and I'm like, is this above ground, underground? This is either a lot of digging or like the Burj Khalifa lost its status as tallest building, you know? There's a really fucking tall building, or we have dug really deep into the ground. One of 2 things has happened. So, yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.